Hey everyone, Sophia here, pretending to be more excited than she is because she is down. I'm talking about myself in third person. Oh, how are you today, Lauren?
I'm hanging in there. I am slightly dying of muscular pain, but that's about it. Other than that, my life is great.
Good, good. Life is great is a good thing.
Yes.
I have this like baseline mental exhaustion, and
Yeah.
it could be burnout or like depression. I don't really know exactly what it is, but maybe it has to do with this episode that we're going to talk about. And
Yeah. I mean, it's to be expected with like the episode.
yeah, so what's the episode? Relationship grief. And
Yes.
I wanted
Dealing
to
with
yeah, dealing with it and
dealing with relationships and the grief that they bring. Ultimately, I feel like pretty much every single person on the face of this planet is eventually going to deal with relationship grief. So, here we go.
um the point of this episode is to talk about this thing that everyone experiences, and then also what it is, and then kind of in line with the whole Real Problems podcast deal is that it's real, and I have like a story of why I'm so passionate about that being real. But grief in general, it's a deep sorrow, especially that caused by someone's death, and that's the dictionary definition. But relationship grief is that a deep sorrow, and it feels like someone died, but
Yeah, definitely.
because they're no longer in your life, but they
In the
didn't
way
die.
that
They died
like
from your life.
they died from your life, or they're no longer in your life in the way that they previously were.
Yeah. Or not in your life at all, or yeah, as you said, not as they previously were. And then it's real. Like when I say I have a story, it's after one of my situations with relationship grief, I went to therapy because I was dying. And there were a couple of other people in there that were also going through relationship grief. I did like a group therapy session. And I was like, whoa, other people are so depressed that they have to come to group therapy for a relationship. And I was kind of judging myself. But people were also experiencing intense grief from losing a relationship in that room with me. And I thought that I was just overreacting. And I realized I'm not. And then also, I've seen my friends and other people go through a loss of a relationship, and the intensity with which you feel that loss is insane. And people are always like, oh, just get past it, which is strange to me because I'm sure the people who are saying get past it are also have at some point experienced it. So that's crazy to me, but it is really real. It really affects your emotional state, your mental health, and that's okay. It is literally like someone died when you lose a relationship that they're no longer in your life at all, or in the same capacity that they used to be. So
It is, and I think one thing that I kind of want to point out too is everybody's in different stages, and we're going to get into like the cycles of grief and all that, but everybody not only is in a different cycle of grief, but they're also in different cycles of relationships with themselves. And I feel like your relationship with yourself has a lot to do with grief and the way that you grieve, and just some of the different experiences that you go through.
100%. And that's not something I realized until now. And if it isn't clear, I just got out of a relationship. That's kind of where this is coming from. And Lauren, you got out of a relationship within the last like year and a half. So
Yeah, it was actually, it just reached a year week or two ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep things relevant to our lives. This is pretty relevant. So,
Yeah.
and like the way that I'm experiencing this type of grief is different than I've experienced past relationship grief because I am in such a different place with myself. And it's really, it's strange and kind of cool.
I don't know, like, I think that one of the things, so as many of you know, I got out of almost a 4-year-long relationship. And number one, I had never experienced anything like that, but I had experienced breakups before I had experienced that relationship ending. And it's very interesting throughout life and your progression of experience as a human being, how you react to different situations. And I think that in combination with just you as your own individual self, like I stated before, the combination of those two are like very important for seeing how, like, just feeling and being in the moment of where you are now with your breakup. And we talked about this before we even started recording this episode. And basically, like, you're in a different spot now than you were with your previous breakup. Mm-hmm. And it's very intriguing. I'm repeating your words, but it's very intriguing to see how we learn and how we develop coping mechanisms and
use them.
Those coping mechanisms transform over time as we age and as we gain new experience.
Yeah, and then also I'm like, in past relationships I've been, and I know other people do this too, where I've used the relationship to fill a missing piece of myself. Yeah. Like, it is the half that I'm missing. And, I mean, your other half, they're supposed to be your other half, and I'm putting, like, air bunnies around that. Because it's, like, 2 puzzle pieces, but each puzzle piece has its own picture on it. It's not, like, the puzzle piece can't exist on its own. The puzzle piece is perfectly okay existing on its own. But yes. I was not using that. I was, like, a puzzle piece that couldn't exist on its own. I was, like, a chewed up puzzle, like, waterlogged puzzle piece.
I wonder if, in general, everyone goes through that at some point, because I know I definitely have, especially as, like, a young teenager and, like, finding myself and going through the process of navigating relationships while also trying to figure out who you are as a person. You can fall into that trap of,
I need someone to complete me.
And you're not complete as a whole being. And, like, I wonder if that's just everybody goes through that, or, like, a vast majority of people experience that throughout their lifetime. Because I know we both have.
Yeah, I really don't know. I think that I've seen people who are in their 50s or, you know, older that still have not found themselves in a way that they're okay on their own. And I've seen people that are our age and younger that totally know their self-worth and are okay being alone. And I'm not really sure where that, like, I feel like you have to have a trigger or, like, a big event that makes you find yourself, you know? And if you never had that,
I would agree.
Like, you maybe go along through life without really finding yourself and loving yourself. I don't know.
Yes, that can definitely happen. That most definitely can happen. And if you're older, like older than us, listening to this, like, there's no shame in just now finding yourself out or figuring yourself out. I mean, life is going to look differently for everybody, and whatever that path is, I'm grateful, whoever you are listening to this, that you are potentially in that space of being able to be cognitively aware of what's going on. So
right, and that you're, like, here listening to us, growing with us and wanting to be
Right.
the best version of yourself. So,
Right. So let's go through kind of our experiences as dating human beings, and as people who have had multiple relationships throughout our lives. Walk me through, Sophia, your first time dealing with relationship grief. Like, what was that for you? What did you feel? What did you experience? Like, let's dive into it.
so I was, like I said, a soggy puzzle piece when that happened the first time. And I wasn't even in a relationship with this person. I was just seeing them exclusively, which, in high school, it was in high school. and
Yeah.
and he was like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. And I just died. I mean, I was vomiting in so much pain physically. Like, it felt like I was exploding inside. I can still remember, like, that night just, like, inconsolably crying, like, gagging over the toilet. And, like, I'm laughing now slightly at myself because I've not, that was really intense. But, I was thinking, like, what did I do wrong? Because I just had so many negative self-thoughts at that time that I just didn't feel like I was able to be okay on my own. I felt like I wanted love, and I thought I had it, and then it was taken away from me, and I was just an absolute mess for months. I think that happened at the end of, like, at my transition period into college. So it was a several, like, a 6-month, 7-month time frame, I think, that I was just destroyed. Like, I didn't find happiness in anything. I couldn't function. And, like, it was months before I could go out in public again and be functional. Yeah. So what about you? What was your first time like?
So, my first experience with relationships and grief within relationships, I can't quite pinpoint the very first time that I felt it, because I dated around a lot in high school, and not on purpose, but like I felt like I was in a revolving door of short-term relationships, which I think is the general norm for high school, if you are dating. I mean, it's not as common to be in find your lifelong partner in high school, but
it does happen.
It does happen. And I basically was just in a revolving door, like I said, and I felt really frustrated, and truthfully, I felt like nobody actually wanted me for me. They just wanted me for my body. They just wanted me for an outlet. They just wanted me because I was like an easy punching bag. Like, there was so many reasons why they wanted me in their life, but it wasn't actually because they wanted me as the person. I was more so just convenient for them. And I was so frustrated in that because for me, I approached relationships much differently than that. Like, I never really wanted multiple relationships in my life. Like, I'm more of a find my person, commit, and I'm done. Like, and I'll just give my energy to that person.
So am I. That's why this one was so hard, because I was like, I didn't date around. Like, I did the opposite. I was raised to be like, if you're dating someone, then you see a future with them and possibly marrying them. Otherwise, there's no point in dating them.
Right, and I didn't purposefully date around. Like, it just so happened because it, like, every relationship kept ending.
That's not funny. I'm not laughing.
So, yeah, I mean, like, it was... I think my first major one that I can really think of was my end of freshman, beginning of sophomore year. And I had been friends with this guy since like 8th grade. And our moms were actually really good friends. And so we had met up, we had hung out, and, I really liked him. I thought that he came from a good background, etc., etc., and I was his friend for a long time. Like, we did not date. And finally, I was like, I felt comfortable with dating, which took me a while to get there. And then I think it lasted probably 3 months, if that, and one day he just, like, texted me and was like, yeah, I'm done. And I was like, what the heck? Like, I was broken hearted, and I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried. But I don't feel like it was anything atypical from, a first heartbreak type of situation. And I eventually got over it, and then I got into my first long-term relationship. I'm putting that in quotes because it was the most on-again, off-again thing ever. Extremely unhealthy, and I learned a lot from that relationship. But it was about a year and a half. And after that relationship ended, I didn't really feel anything besides nobody actually wanting me for me, because it was pure use of me. So I didn't really get to grieve because I was just so angry that I was used yet again after I put a year and a half's work into this person just to figure out the same result of, one of my shorter term relationships that had previously happened to that. So
I don't think I felt that way, like that people were using me.
Oh no, I definitely felt that way. And I want to be careful with how much I share just in case like these people are listening and, legal reasons and stuff. But I fully, like, there is no doubt, and they've even admitted to me, like, that I was just a crutch for them in the moment. So I fully know and am aware of that situation. And so it hurt a lot. And especially coming from divorced parents, and especially seeing a lot of relationships throughout my childhood where, I felt like that someone eventually just like falls out of love, or someone eventually just like gives up, and it kept happening to me, and I was getting like so frustrated, and I finally went on this binge of just being like, F it, and I'm never going to find somebody who wants me for me. So I just started dating anybody who showed remote interest in me and was like, hey, guess I'm like just this thing to them, and that's all I'm ever going to be. And I actually, I have never talked about this before publicly, but I actually dated 2 guys at one time. We
Really?
were not exclusive.
Huh.
But, yeah, I was with both of them because I was like, you both are just using me. I know that you're using me, and so why not? And they ended up finding out, well, one found out about the other and got, like, super mad at me. But I confronted him, and I was like, you were never planning on committing to me, so why are you mad?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a total double standard, like, with guys and girls on that.
It was, and it was like,
cool.
He basically just stated, it's the principle of it. And I was like, no. Like, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to have your cake and eat it, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, after that whole situation happened, I finally went to therapy. And in therapy, which is still my same therapist today, I decided that I should be single. And I should be single for like 6 months to a year. And I really just needed to find myself because I was that soggy puzzle piece.
Mm-hmm.
I felt completely valueless. I felt completely used. I was like, who am I? You know, and I was still young. I was 19 when this happened. And I started dating around 14. So that was like 5 years of feeling that way.
Yeah, I don't think I started feeling like I want to find myself until the last relationship I was in. Like,
right. Well, it happens for everybody at different
times,
points.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that happened, and then, wouldn't you know, 6 months later, I think it was about 6 months, it might have been like 5.5, I ended up meeting my last partner of my last relationship, and that was the 4-year one. So diving into that a little bit, Sophia, feel free to dive in, cut in whenever you feel like you can relate. But basically, it was the first time I ever felt true relationship grief, not guilt, sorry. And that relationship, like, it's still hard for me to talk about even in this moment. Not because I'm sad, or not because I'm whatever, but it was just a lot to go through. It was a lot to summarize. I mean, 4 years of going through everything that I did and being so young. I was 19 and a half. I had just passed my half birthday by 1 day. So I was 19 and a half and 1 day years old when I had met him. And, you know, we were both young, and I learned a lot from that relationship. But, you know, we lived together for 3 years. So coming out of it, like, I felt as if I was going through a miniature divorce. There was financials, there was housing issues, there were, you know, everything that you would probably face in a divorce, except for we were not legally together. So it was hard. I lost my home. I lost this relationship that I had been in for so long, and I didn't know who I was as a person anymore, because I got into it so young, and I was exiting it as a college graduate, entering into the workforce, and a almost mid-20-year-old. Like, it was just completely different people. So, yes, it was kind of a mix of, like, feeling fine one minute and then feeling very confused the next minute.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, like, you had convinced yourself logically why everything was good, and then you'd be okay, and then all of a sudden emotions would take over, and you're just like, I'm not okay. It's not okay anymore.
Yeah. I don't want to go into this too far, just because there was, again, if this person's listening to this, I don't want to get into, like, legal trouble or anything, but there were a lot of unanswered questions in the end of the relationship. There were a lot of unanswered actions and words that happened that to this day I still don't understand. Like, nothing matched up with each other. Absolutely nothing. Well, not absolutely nothing, but, like, it felt like absolutely nothing. And, like, I could literally sit here and list off probably 100 things that to this day do not make sense to me with where we ended things. And logically, I knew it needed to end. My feet were pretty much out the door by the time the relationship had ended, and I was like, dude, I'm gone. And I wanted to be gone. So it wasn't for a lack of, my heart was just completely shattered out of nowhere, because that's not the truth. But it was hard, and I couldn't understand why things happened the way they did.
Yeah, and that's how the second heartbreak went for me. Was like I had so many unanswered questions, and there were so many contradictory things. Like, he looks at me one way and he says this one thing, and then he acts a completely different way, and I'm like, yeah, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
And that was really hard. And I'm a super driven person when it comes to finding answers to things. And so I wrote like
Same.
letters and I talked to my
Same.
therapist and I could not figure out like how to make it make sense to me.
It
The
still doesn't, and
contradictions.
exactly, and like that was literally the hardest part back then, and it still is now to this day about that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I decided eventually, like, I came to the conclusion, the only conclusion that made sense was that he thought he felt something that he didn't feel. And so he was talking to me as if he felt those things because he thought that he did. And then realized later that, or realized maybe that he didn't actually feel those things. And I've actually done that. Like, I've been that person that has said and thought that I felt things that upon reflection I actually didn't feel them. And so I've come to terms with that and I'm okay with that now. But it was a long time, a very long time of pain. And the type of pain that I was experiencing was physical pain. I actually self-harmed during that time. And very few people know that. So saying that on this podcast that's a little bit, I can't even believe I just said that out loud. I think there may be like 2 people in the world who know that. And yeah. I was just drowning in memories. Like, I was living in memories. Like, yeah. I would sit there and daydream with memories. Yeah.
Yeah, the memories are hard. And I'll tell you, like, coming from 4 years of creating memories together and living together for 3, like, that was so hard, you know, with social media now. Like, I kept getting pop-ups of these pictures and it was like, this day last year you were here. And, you know, that was hard. Like, I had to go through and manually delete everything, and so I wouldn't continue getting that. But yeah, I mean, memories are definitely hard.
Yeah, I've never been one to delete photos of anything because I like memories. Usually, even the hard ones, I like being able to remember things because your brain is only capable of remembering so much, and seeing a picture can recall those things. But I actually had to delete every photo I had of this person because I could not function seeing them. And I was doing anything I could to feel close to him too. Like, a song that he liked, I would listen to it and I would literally like transport myself into a memory with doing those things. And I'm not quite sure like how that stopped. I think that I started writing letters and I would take those feelings and put them on paper, and then they were kind of like expelled from my body at that point. It's like, all right, it's now on paper, and then I can just like put it away. And that definitely helped. So I don't know if anyone out there is going through that.
Yeah, and I think it definitely helped me too. That was one of the recommendations I had received from my therapist. And I wrote letters to him, and in different ways. Like, I would write angry letters of, you know, why did you do this? Like, why did this happen? Like, what does this even mean? I don't understand. I'm confused. And then I would write other letters, like, detailing out completely my confusions and just asking him rather than being angry about it. And it took me a while, but I mean, eventually I just had to come to this point where I knew that they would never be answered, or probably would never be. And just live with it. Like as shitty as that is, especially being a person who wants answers and is determined to get answers, I really had to basically let it be okay. And that was hard for me.
Yeah, see,
That
I
was
couldn't do
really,
that.
really hard.
I was unable to do that. I mean, years after the fact, I was unable to do
Yeah.
that. So I
I
think
think
like I just made up an answer in my head and then just full force believed it, and
it's
that was
so
that.
yeah, it's so funny you say that because I had a conversation with my mom after the relationship ended, and she made a comment to me about how she would have moved on and she would have stopped questioning things in her head. And I did try. I tried to get the answers from him that I thought were justified, but he couldn't even get me those. Like we had that discussion, when I left your place,
Mm-hmm.
about a week after I officially moved out, and I came to visit you. And the day that I was driving back home, I messaged him, and I was just like, it was my last final ditch effort to get any logical answers out of it, because I couldn't understand how this person who literally lives their life based off of logic was so completely illogical in the end. Like,
Mm-hmm.
nothing made sense. So, I don't know. Like, I did try, but it became to the point of, like, what's the point? Like, we're just going to keep going around and round and round in circles, and we're not going to get anywhere. And by that end of that conversation, we were so frustrated, so angry, etc., with one another, because I couldn't understand why he did the things that he did, or he said the things that he said. And he just felt like I was trying to, like, see if he was going to date me again, which I didn't care about. Like, all I wanted was answers as to why things happened the way that they did.
I think
So,
that
yeah.
some people, like, if it were me and somebody were asking me those questions, I'm really blunt, one, and like I've become very blunt, and two, I am like open and I'm very self-aware. So I think that if someone were to ask me like questions to make things make sense, that I would be able to answer those things in a way that made sense, but that's only because I am in a place of where like I've grown and I'm
Mm-hmm.
self-aware. Um
Yes, and that is the exact key point of why our relationship, at least to what I believe, why it didn't work out. I mean, literally
mhm.
every single year, probably once a year during the course of that relationship, there was a mental breakdown on his end of, what am I doing? Do I actually want this relationship? Etc., etc., etc. And that just, by the end of it, pointed out to me how little there was of being self aware. And I think that, that was hard for me because I am such a self aware person, and I'm able to have those conversations. Like you said, if somebody came to me, I would be able to sit down with them and explain everything, but he just was not able to. And he had feelings, but it was not able to be worked through in a way that you or I maybe could have in that instance. And you said that you would not be able to move on without answers. But I think for me, the turning point for that was finding out 3 weeks, I think, or 4 weeks after we got out of our relationship, that he had decided to get into another relationship. And it was really the nail in the coffin for me, because in our last conversation together, from what I can at least remember and attest to in this moment, is, he made statements along the lines of the fact that he wanted to go to therapy and that he wanted to help himself. And I had really, really hoped from the bottom of my heart that he would have gone and just worked on himself and found himself and, been alone for a little while, because he had literally never been alone in his life, which was a major part of his issues with our relationship. Is he was worried that he was in it because he was scared of being alone. But I genuinely hoped, as somebody who once loved and cared for him, that he would do that for himself. And instead, I found out that, he had gotten into a relationship and decided not to do that work. And a lot of very hypocritical things happened after that. And it was the nail in the coffin. And one of the final things I want to talk about this, because I don't want to dive too much deeper. I know I've said that a couple times, but this really is the end of it. I felt very unlovable due to a lot of the words that were shared with me, especially surrounding my endometriosis. And basically, he felt like I was broken somewhat. And just,
that makes me mad.
Yeah, it was not healthy. And I had to get past that. And it was really hard to feel that from somebody who told you that they basically unconditionally loved you by that point. Of 4 years. And and then to see everything transpire after that, the way that it did, was just so confusing. But it was very hurtful, to summarize everything.
No, I was thinking about what you were saying about feelings of being unlovable. So the words that were used in relationships from my past were not words that made me feel unlovable. But for some reason, I had developed this understanding that I was unlovable throughout my life. But it wasn't necessarily I don't think from my relationships. I think it was just from my anxiety, in these high standards I set for myself, that I didn't love myself, therefore I was unlovable.
Yeah.
But that made the grief so much worse, because
definitely
I was just looking for evidence to confirm those beliefs that I am unlovable, I'm not good enough, nobody will ever love me again or like this person did. And that the self-negativity that I was drowning in, separate from the relationship grief, just the relationship grief was the cherry on top that just completely melted everything down.
Yeah.
And I was just, it felt like I was dying, which is not an exaggeration. I was emotionally dying.
Yeah, I was too at points, and I can relate to that heavily. And everything you just said, I've experienced. And I have developed an anxiety because of everything I have gone through. And it's something I've been very honest in my new relationship with, which, by the way, you just brought up the point of never feeling like you're never going to be able to find somebody ever again. And that is definitely something I went through. But if you're listening to this and you are feeling that way currently, I promise you eventually things will be okay. And if I wouldn't have gotten out of that relationship, I would have never gotten into my new relationship that I'm in now. And I can't even express into words how happy I am in my new relationship. Like, I held out. I held out to find the right person for me. And it was the best decision I have ever made. And I wanted somebody who at least met my expectations, but my current partner, like, meets and exceeds them. And, you know, even though you may be feeling that now, I promise it does get better. That's my soapbox.
Mm-hmm.
Continue, Sophia.
So I have like a different perspective on that. Like, yes, it does get better. But so I was, like I said, drowning in this second emotional heartache. And if I had not experienced that, and you know how I said earlier that there's a trigger for people that forces them into self-growth, and that was the trigger that forced me into self-growth, because I was so miserable after that breakup that I, like, was not okay existing, and I didn't want to. And so that forced me to go to therapy and start growing. And the real work and the real, like, progress that I've made didn't start until really my last relationship that I just got out of. And if I had not gone through all that pain before then I would not have been in that relationship that I was just in. And I grew and have learned so much about what I need and about my value in that relationship. And I'm so thankful that I received that and that I went through that experience, because I'm, like, a better person at the end of it. And I don't exactly know what my relationship with that person is going to look like going forward, but I think that we're going to still be in each other's lives, and I hope that we are. And I don't know in what capacity, but it's a totally different sort of grief than it has been in the past, and that's because of how much I've grown personally. Like, I know what I deserve, and I know what I want in a person and what I need, and I wasn't getting that, and I, like, I know I deserve that. So while I'm very sad because this person is no longer part of my everyday, I'm excited about what the future holds. And where I was saying it, I have a different perspective on that, is, like, if I find someone, that's great. If I do find my person, that's great. But I'm so comfortable being on my own and, like, in my skin and who I am, and, like, the things I do that bring me joy and keep me balanced, that if I end up alone, I will be okay. You know?
I think I eventually personally got there too. It took me a little while, but I truly feel that way. And I've actually, one of the tests to make sure that I continuously stay that way is I, like, check in with myself sometimes. And I don't know if this is healthy or not, but I check in with myself, and I picture myself, you know, just living on my own, being on my own, doing my own thing, having my own dog, like, doing all of these things in my mid to later 20s. And I feel happy with it. Even, you know, in my current relationship, which I'm extremely happy in right now, if that were to end, I am sure I would be sad, and I would go through the grieving process and everything. But, you know, I feel like I'm at a point where if I'm just me by myself, then I'm okay with that too. And I think it's a really healthy, important point to be at in any relationship, because if you're not okay being alone, it can really cause detriment to your relationship. And that was actually something that I had an early conversation with my now significant other about, because, like, I think it's really important. And if I learned anything from my last relationship, it's that you both need to be okay being your individual selves and, like, being alone with yourself.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah,
I'm
that doesn't.
there. And
Yeah, so am I.
I'm noticing that I'm there as I'm leaving this relationship that I was just in,
Yeah.
because I'm so kind to myself. Whereas before, in other relationships, it was like, oh, you're so unlovable. Oh, you messed up in this way. Oh, he doesn't like you because of this thing that you did, or this, like, thing that you said, or this personality trait. And it's just so unkind to myself. And that would just, like, tumble me further into that, like, drowning.
Yeah.
And now it's like the same songs that made me crumble when I was going through those other breakups make me feel hopeful now for future. Like, I'm like hearing these things, and it's like a love song, okay? Like somebody's wrapping you up in their arms and they love you for XYZ reason, okay? You're putting yourself in that love song. Before, I would think, oh, like, being wrapped up in someone's arms. Oh, I missed that. Oh, I'm never going to have that again. Oh, that sucks. I'm unlovable. And now it's like, oh, yeah, that, like, I can't wait for that. That's going to be really nice when I have that. And then even if I don't have that, like, I have my, this is going to sound a little cheesy, I think, but I have my room, and there's so much about my room that brings me peace, and, like, my bed and my blankets and my pillows and my lights and my lava lamp, and I'm like, that wraps me up, you know?
Yeah, your own space. And, I would agree with you. That was one of the things that made me feel more at peace with just being by myself and just being me. Like, I feel love, and I feel surrounded, and I don't feel like I'm lacking anything. And I don't know, like, I can sit in my room and just be happy and feel whole. So
That was
I
the
do
other
get what
thing.
you're saying.
The other thing too that you just reminded me of, that I was thinking earlier, about being loved. So I don't think I could exist without love, because I have, like, a personal belief about the world that the point of existing is for love, but not necessarily romantic love. I believe
Right.
that, like, the love that you have for things that you're passionate about, and family members or friends, and totally other types of relationships besides romantic love, are what makes life worth living. So I have those things, and I have those things tenfold. Like, I have so much love from so many different places in my life that the romantic love is just like icing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I don't know that I feel the same way that you do about this, because we've talked about it before. And I haven't necessarily resonated with the way that you see and feel that. But I agree.
It's
Like,
unique.
I agree that, love is a huge, huge, huge portion of life. And being able to share that with somebody else is a major factor in just everyday living. But it doesn't have to come from a romantic partner. It can come from a friend. It can come from family. It can come from really
Yourself.
anywhere. Yourself. And you can feel fulfilled within that. So, do you want to move on to the stages of grief and just briefly overview them, since I feel like we've covered our personal grief stories pretty in depth?
Yeah. So if you've never looked at the stages of grief, there's shock, which is the initial paralysis at bearing the bad news. So if you're being broken up with, there's the, deer in headlights kind of feeling. And then denial, I'm not quite sure if I'm in denial or acceptance right now because denial, it doesn't feel terrible usually because you're denying that it's existing, so you're not allowing yourself to feel it. So basically you're trying to avoid it happening or you're trying to avoid feeling it from happening. Then anger typically occurs where you are frustrated and you pour out those frustrated emotions. Bargaining. When you're looking at this, Lauren, are you seeing like how you went through this in your past relationship at all? Like, because I went through every single one of them in exiting the relationship I was just in.
Yes, however, a lot of them happened while I was still in the relationship.
Yeah, a lot of these happened while I was still in the relationship too.
So,
like for example, bargaining, where I left off.
Yeah, I can just run through it real quick as an example to our listeners if, they are curious how these may feel. So, the initial one, shock. My partner basically came to me and just said that he wasn't sure if I was his lifelong partner, and that was very shocking to me, and it took me a while to process. Then I tried to avoid the inevitable, which at that point I knew we would probably end things, but I was trying to avoid it. So we went to couples counseling, couples therapy, and to be fair, I asked him if he wanted to do that because I was not willing to do that unless he fully wanted to do it and wanted to fix our relationship, and he was fully on board to do that. So keep that in mind. And then the anger portion, frustrating outpouring of bottled up emotion. By the end of the, or not even, I don't think end, I think during, honestly, us going to couples therapy, I just released a lot of anger because I was so mad that this person was saying all these things and I had no idea that he felt this way, such as feeling like I was a broken woman because I have endometriosis. Like, that was very angering for me.
My anger was I don't deserve to be treated this way,
Yeah, exactly. That was pretty much mine too. And there were other things that happened too. It's just that was one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
So,
bargaining.
Oh, and bargaining, which was, one of the large factors of the reason why he wanted to end the relationship was because he said that he didn't feel like we had enough in common with one another. So I tried to bargain and basically oh, I'm sure we do. We just need to try harder. So I started doing all these things that he liked, but he never really did anything that I liked or never really initiated anything that I wanted to do, etc. So it was a one-way street, and that wasn't okay. So that kind of led to a depression because I was just finally realizing the inevitable, this just isn't going to work out. There's no compromise here. There's no nothing. There's just telling me everything I'm doing wrong, and that's not okay, and it made me sad. I didn't really go through the testing phase seeking realistic solutions that I can think of or that I can remember. Again, it was a while ago. But for me, I basically just knew that he needed to either get his shit together or we were ending the relationship. And then acceptance was finally finding the way forward. This one didn't happen for me until after I got out of the relationship and after I went to therapy. But I think probably at about 4 or 5 months post-relationship ending and me going to therapy, I felt that.
Yeah, for me, bargaining was I was bargaining with myself. I'm okay, I can accept this if he does this, or I can accept this if he does this.
I remember you doing that.
Yeah, and then eventually I, the depression, which is, finally realizing that the inevitable is the inevitable, really hit, and I was just it's not, my needs aren't being met, and, no matter how much I give, like, for bargaining, I'm still being unfulfilled, and I can't handle that anymore. And that was, like, just crushing to realize. Right. And shortly after that, I chatted with him about it, and we decided that the best solution was ending the relationship. And so I'm currently in the acceptance phase and working through that. And I know what I deserve, and that's my way forward, is knowing my self-worth, loving myself, knowing, like, being kind to myself, saying kind things in my head, and knowing that eventually, like, everything's gonna work out the way it's supposed to. So
that's pretty much the 7 stages of grief. We created a site, or a page, I should say, on our website to display some blog posts in relation to our podcast episodes. So I can go ahead and post this image that we're looking at for everybody to view if you want to go back and look at it later.
Yeah, that, and then the kind of, like, summary for me in this is that if you're experiencing really, really intense relationship grief, it may be a sign that you have a relationship with yourself that needs some work. And I think that may be, like, hopefully a trigger for you to go and work on that.
Get help for that. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I just want to state, too, like, we had a whole episode about progression versus regression, and I think that relationship grief could be one of those topics or items that could feel like regression. If you've gone through a major breakup before and now you're going through another one, and, you know, you personally feel like you're not handling it well, that could feel like regression to you. But just know that you as a person are always constantly evolving and growing, and you may just need new tools. So seeking help for that, and, you know, redeveloping tools or finding new ones is always more than okay, and, like, very good. Like, that's awesome if you can do that. All right, well, we hope that you guys got some I don't even know, like, help from that, or just better understanding grief, or feeling at least not alone in your grief. I think that's always definitely helpful when you're going through it.
Yeah, it's definitely been helpful for me in the past to know that other people have felt the same way, and hopefully you seek the help that you need if you are going through that, and be kind to yourself. So all right, see you guys in a couple weeks.
Yeah. All right, bye.
Bye.